Okay.
You stated something about sacrifice in this theory that seemed very interesting. Can you explain that?
Yeah, this is interesting and goes to the idea of oscillation. Oscillation, of course, being that the universe repeats itself. Over the duration of the universe, which is tens of billions of years, mass unwittingly sacrifices its energy to convolution by providing planets resulting from the gravitation cycle compressing mass, and energy in the form of sunlight for life forms to support convolution within them. And the result of that sacrifice by the completion of the Big Crunch is a peaked energy God, which then sacrifices its energy in a split second to the mass to initiate a whole new universe. The realization of that sacrificial energy exchange caught my attention because the idea of sacrifice has always been such a strong ideal in so many different religions.
I understand the dynamics of the Big Bang from that earlier equation, but why is God reduced to minimal energy?
That's due to the energy exchange rule. The thought level of a consciousness is reduced proportional to the energy transferred into the third dimension. The thought at rest is released into the mass, and in so doing, the single entity God is reduced to minimal energy and disperses in the Big Bang as trillions of bits of lowest form consciousness. Without that reduction in energy taking place, there would be no convolution, no us.
So you're saying then that God completely disperses, that there is no God consciousness remaining after the Big Bang?
I pondered that same question. It does seem like too big a leap of faith, even for God consciousness, to disperse completely. Because if something went wrong in the expansion, that could mean the end of the universe. This actually led to a prediction, which is, at the location of the Big Bang event, there should be evidence of a black hole or collection of black holes larger than any other clumping in the universe. The reason why is because any God portion that didn't transfer its energy into the mass would remain in that location, along with an equal amount of black hole mass. Also, design-wise, it makes sense from the standpoint of providing a return location for all mass and consciousness to contract back to in the Big Crunch.
Yeah. How can consciousness in the fifth dimension expand with mass in the third dimension into a new universe?
That's an odd idea, isn't it? And one I had trouble with at first. It does so due to the disparate energy attraction rule, which we briefly talked about earlier. The greater the disparity of energy between the two realms, the greater their attraction. However, an exchange of energy between the two realms can only occur in the Big Bang. The timing of both mass and consciousness completing the Big Crunch at the same time is due to the fourth dimension time, as a link between the two realms. However, there must be a mechanism that draws them together. And at some point through the process of randomly visualizing a multitude of various possibilities, it was understood that they overlap due to their disparate energy states. What's charged positive draws in what's charged negative and vice versa. So that same dynamic is also present as mass and consciousness disperse out into the new universe, with mass at peaked energy and consciousness at minimal energy, connecting them together as they spread outward.
Yeah, okay. Well, if a God and a black hole overlap prior to the Big Crunch, then why wouldn't that God cause a mini Big Bang by releasing the thought at rest into the black hole?
On the surface, it seems like a good question, I agree. But it's simply because all God consciousness is uniform, meaning it's all at the same level, so it all has the same full intellect of how the universe works. Thus it would know the transfer into the mass doesn't take place until the completion of the Big Crunch.
Okay. Well, if the universe can expand and contract, then what's the difference between compression of mass to form a black hole and the expansion of mass in a Big Bang? Aren't they simply opposite events?
Exactly. They form in opposite directions. Oscillation wouldn't be possible if that weren't true. The forming of a black hole or a God is simply the opposite of the atomic or mosaic force switching order, and opposite of the transitioning energy states present in the Big Bang, just on a much smaller scale. You could see that from the equations. I don't have them up right now, but if you were to compare the universe event equations with the forming of a black hole or a God, you would see that it's just in the opposite direction.
Well, that must have been quite a moment of excitement when you first made that realization.
Absolutely. It dawned on me one day as I was walking down the hall, and I rushed to compare the equations to confirm it.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Mhm.